Well, hello, it's Robert. Glad to join you again. I got a little bit of this album playing on right now. Nice early George Jones Mercury album. And so it's playing in the background while I share some more of country LPs with you. Now, what I thought I'd do today of interest is various artists' compilations. A lot of times you see ones from the 70s and 80s. They're just songs mixed off of other LPs and just kind of shoved together. But earlier, the various artists' country albums can actually be a lot of fun, very enjoyable to listen to. In many cases, in the 50s and early 60s on compilation albums on country, sometimes it was the only appearance of a particular song or record on it. It didn't come off of another LP, but you had to get that various artists album to get that. Now I'm going to share some examples with you, some very nice various artists and interesting albums on country music. One that was issued in the early 60s was on the RCA Camden label called Maple on the Hill. It was a nice 10 songs, way too short, of 30s country music. J. Maynard's Mountaineers was on it, Delmore Brothers, Brady Kincaid, Uncle Dave Macon, and the Carlisle Brothers. It was 2 songs by each, but this was the only LP that you could get those numbers on. So it's a very nice album to listen to. As I mentioned before, it's way too short. One of the old Audiolab albums, which featured people like Mac O'Dell and Esco Hankins and Jimmy Martin and Bob Osborne. A very nice album. Audiolab put out a few various artists' albums, and many times again, it was the only album that these songs would appear on. An early Capitol, one of the first Capitol various artists' albums, was The Country's Best. Now this came out in the late 50s, around 56 or 7. Featured Wanda Jackson, Silver Threads and Golden Needles, Wynn Stewart's Waltz of the Angels, Skeets McDonald, Don't Let the Stars Get in Your Eyes, Freddie Hart's Loose Talk, Gene Shepard's Satisfied Mind, Berlin Huskies' Hank's Song. And again, this was the only album that you could get a lot of these recordings on, and made this a very nice album to put on a very nice variety to early Capitol country music. Now, in the 70s, there was 3 nice volumes. This actually came from England on Rockabilly, but CBS Rockabilly Classics. Largely it was people like Johnny Horton, Little Jimmy Dickens, Bobby Lord, Marty Robbins, Freddie Hart, and others. You could get a lot of good recordings on here, good liner notes, and recording dates, rarities on there, such as Bobby Lord's first record of No More, No More, No More was on one of these volumes. The Collins Kids, Beetlebug Bop. On this one was also Marty Robbins' version of Long Tall Sally. This was actually volume 2 of that. This is the one that had Bobby Lord, No More, No More, No More. Jimmy Murphy was on it. Johnny Horton's Lovers Rock. The Maddox Brothers, Ugly and Slouchy. Lefty Frizzell's You're Humbugging Me. And then they came out with the 3rd volume. This right here. This featured Earl Peterson's Columbia recording of Boogie Blues. And Joe Maphis and Larry Collins. Also Charlie Adams and Sid King. Very early Billy Crash Craddock from the late 50s and Ronnie Self. These were nice albums to listen to. Another one of the old Camden albums. This was the original recordings. Hank Snow, Rock and Rollin' Ocean. Chet Atkins, San Antonio Rose. Eddie Arnold's Cuddlebuggin' Baby. Hal Lone Pine and his Mountaineers Trail to Lonesome Pine. Jim Reeves, Have I Told You Lately That I Love You. Get Tanner and the Skillet Licker, Soldier's Joy was on this. This was a real good one from the mid-50s on Columbia. It's called Greatest Western Hits. It actually is Carl Smith, Lefty Frizzell, and Ray Price. This was the only album for many, many years that the originals of Lefty Frizzell's If You Got the Money, I Got the Time, Always Late, Mom and Dad's Waltz, and I Love You a Thousand Ways. Ray Price's original version, I'll Be There, was on this. And also Carl Smith's Let Mother Nature Have Her Way, You're the One, and Hey Joe and Loose Talk. This was the only album for many years that these originals appeared on. A very fine album. It's not too hard to get. It's been reissued a number of times, but give this one a listen. Another one of Capitol artists was one that came out in the early 60s called First of the Famous. And this featured things like Tex Ritter, There's a New Moon Over My Shoulder, Merle Travis, Divorce Me, COD was on it, Tex Williams, Smoke, 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 Hank Thompson's original recording of Humpty Dumpty Heart, Tennessee Ernie Ford's Shotgun Boogie, Farron Young's Going Steady, Sonny James' Young Love, Wanda Jackson, Right or Wrong, a few others. but this was largely to take some of the Capitol artists and put down and what their first hit was in their career. King had a number of various artist albums released. This is one of the very first ones, all-time country and western hits. Featured Cowboy Copas, Kentucky Waltz, Moon Mulligan, I'll Sail My Ship Alone, Grandpa Jones' Old Rattler, Wayne Rainey, Why Don't You Haul Off and Love Me, Reno and Smiley, I'm the Talk of the Town. That's just a few of the highlights on this. And then we have now a very tough one to get on the Imperial label, Hillbilly House Party. This came out in the 50s, does not feature their biggest country artist, Slim Whitman, interestingly. I would have thought it would have on here. But there were some Imperial country artists of the day, Billy Briggs and Tex Atchison, Merle Kilgore, who had a long career. Also Charlie Walker. It's interesting to listen to these. Charlie Walker had a long career. He was big in the late 50s with Pick Me Up on Your Way Down. He had recorded for Decca before that, and in the early 50s he recorded for Imperial. And there's a couple of his songs on here. Billy Briggs' masterful recording of Chew Tobacco Rag. Very, very fine version. Has a nice bounce and jump to it. Also is on this album. Of course, County Records was known for their old-time music reissues. And they had a number of albums where they had various old-time musicians. Some of those old-time bands, string bands, may only have made one or two records. So the only way you would get them was on the County label. Now, when County started in, I think it was '64, was their first album release, and it wasn't quite 500 copies pressed. And then it kind of took off, and then they became right popular. But County number 501 was their first LP, and this was it right here, a collection of mountain fiddle music. So it's mostly old-time fiddle instrumentals by some of the bands of the time, such as Al Hopkins and his Hillbillies, Roan County Ramblers, and Burnett and Rutherford, and others that if you know something about that era, some of those names may seem very familiar to you. One of their nicer, I thought, LP issues of various artists was Mountain Blues on a County label. And this had some of the bands of the time, Lee County Revelers, Jimmy Tarleton, Doc Boggs, Frank Hutchison, one of my favorites. It also features one, I call it a masterpiece. I absolutely love it. Sam McGee's Railroad Blues, that was made in '34. Very nice, fine guitar piece by him and singing, and that's also on this LP as well. Another one of the King various artists albums is Country and Western Jamboree. This was the album with some of the only appearances of Reno and Smiley's Under Your Spell Again was on this. Grandpa Jones' Old Rattler's Treat Again was on this as well. Stanley Brothers' How Far to Little Rock. That was their most popular King recording, and had not made it to any LPs at the time, except this LP here. Also, Grandpa Jones' That Memphis Train from 1950 also made its first appearance on LP here. Another very nice King artist one is Nashville Bandstand. This is volume 2, and one of my favorites on here is Curly Fox. Come Here Son. Nice good fiddle piece, fast fiddle number. But also very early Bill Carlisle, A Dollar Ain't a Dollar Anymore. Nice early Merle Travis cut. Hawkshaw Hawkins, I Love You a Thousand Ways. Reno and Smiley's Greenback Dollar, and quite a number of others on here. And speaking of King, another very difficult one to find was Homespun Humor. Actually, these are songs that are more lighthearted. Such as Charlie Ryan's Hot Rod Lincoln is on here. Grandpa Jones' 15 Cents Is All I Got. Again, Stanley Brothers' How Far to Little Rock. So very nice album here to listen to. Very tough to get to. In the mid-'60s, one I liked very much was a nice double set. It's called Stars of the Grand Ole Opry. It was a box set with a booklet to it on RCA. And a number of songs, gems appeared on this, such as Uncle Dave Macon, Keep My Skillet Good and Greasy. These were all RCA artists. Kitty Wells' How Far Is Heaven was on it. Porter Wagner's Satisfied Mind, a number of big hits that had been on other LPs. But then there was others that had not, such as Bradley Kincaid's Letter Edged in Black, Ernest Stoneman's Sourwood Mountain, very early Willis Brothers fiddle piece of Back Up and Push. Of course, then Bill Monroe's Orange Blossom Special was on it as well. And Justin Tubbs' Take a Letter, Miss Gray, Lonzo and Oscar, I'm on Grandpa. And you could go on with it. But it was a very nice album to listen to. They were able to squeeze 10 songs aside without editing or cutting anything out. So a very fine album if you can ever get a hold of this. and to get the mono version. Star Day did a tremendous job on various artists, especially their early ones. They did a lot of bluegrass albums, and you don't want to pass any of these up. Again, some of these, it's the only appearance you find on album. A nice double set was a Banjo Jamboree Spectacular. Featured the Country Gentlemen, Buzz Busby, Bill Harrell, Lonesome Pine Fiddlers, and a number of others that made their way, Jimmy Eanes and others that made their way to this album. Ken Clark's Big Man, that's a nice recording that's made its way to this LP as well. Another one a little earlier on Star Day was the Bluegrass Special. This featured Bill Harrell's Eating Out of Your Hand, also Jim and Jesse's Have You Lost Your Love for Me, Country Gentlemen, Hey Little Girl, a lot of late 50s of bluegrass. This album was issued back around 58 or 59. And finally, this was kind of a budget label one, Vocalion. This is the mono version of it. Country Star Parade Volume 1. They had 3 volumes. This may seem like a basic album. It's not too tough to get. But Roy Acuff had a couple Decca recordings which are on here. This was the only album ever to have the Louvin Brothers' first record, 7 Year Blues Back with Alabama. So that's the only record that they made for Decca, and those 2 sides appeared on this one. As well as a nice masterpiece from Roger Miller, real honky-tonk country from around 58, A Man Like Me. Is also on this album. A couple early Red Savines from the 50s. So don't pass this up if you see it. It's a gem of an album. Again, it's only 10 songs, a little short, but it's a nice album to listen to. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share today. Some of the various artists' country albums. Do not pass them up when you see some of those early ones. There's a lot of fine recordings on those. And of course, other companies like Franklin Mint, Time Life, and others put together nice sets too. And sometimes it's nice to get that little bit of variety of different singers, kind of go from one to the other, sometimes instead of listening to the same one on the whole side. So I wanted to share those few with you, some very nice early country various artists albums. So sometimes you concentrate on the one artist per record, per album, but don't pass those up by any stretch. So again, this is Robert, and I'll see you next time, and enjoyed being with you for a few minutes. You take care, and enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll let George Jones take us on out of here.